This is Dave Hicks, who is a longtime church member and has the unique perspective of raised at Bower Hill and raising his family at Bower Hill and seeing his daughter Kiri raise her family at Bower Hill. Our next guest is say hello to Dave Hicks. Say hello. Our next guest is Brian Snyder, our present pastor who has, along with his wife Michelle and daughters Chloe and Greta, been with us for 15 years. He is also the longest serving clergy person of any faith in Mount Lebanon. I didn't know that before. And he is the second longest serving pastor in Bower Hill. And we know who the first one is, and we talk about Bill Barker a lot. So let's begin.
I'm going to catch up to it in 2 years.
He's going to catch up in 2 years. That's pretty good. Wow. Okay. So let's begin. The first question is for both of you. And this isn't a point counterpoint. This is for you each to be able to speak. Why are we Bower Hill Community Church not named Bower Hill Presbyterian Church?
Okay, the question, if you heard it or didn't hear it, was why are we called Bower Hill Community Church? And I don't know if you remember, maybe about 10 years ago, we voted on changing the name again, and you decided you wanted to keep it Community Church and not Presbyterian Church. You don't remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember.
So, as I understand, there are 2 reasons for community church. You know that Bill Barker, the founding pastor of this church, was very good friends with Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. And it was all about the neighborhood. It was all about, won't you be my neighbor? And they thought, let's, instead of dividing ourselves as a certain kind of Christian, let's just be Christians in the community. Let's just be about the neighborhood and not about a denomination. So that was pretty forward-looking for 1950. The second thing, as I understand, is that back in the 50s, different churches often were attended by different people, and Presbyterian tended to be kind of upper crust. And they didn't want it to be an exclusive church. They wanted it to be approachable for all people. They wanted it not to be an upper middle class church. They wanted it to be for just anyone who wanted to come. And so, as I understand, the 2 reasons are to play down the denomination, to play up the community, and to make us available to people of all faiths.
Dave, do you have any more to offer?
So the only thing I would add to that is that when I was growing up here in the beginning of the church, I was too young to really appreciate what Brian just said. Until I was probably in high school, I started to question that. Why the name is the way it was. And my parents, that's the first time I got an answer from anybody on that. My parents told me, just as Brian said, and back then, the church was more the center of people's lives. And so it was our community. This is where most of my parents' friends were. And this is where obviously we worship. So that's it.
All right, along those lines, though, I've also heard you say something about a family of believers. Where did that start?
That started, in my knowledge, probably in the 60s. And I think it ties back to Fred Rogers, too. Family, the neighborhood, the community. But it was our family.
And still is, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Bill Barker.
I think Brian wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you can't say that.
I just want to say, I know that a family of believers is kind of a historical tagline for this because I don't want belief to be the thing that gets you in. I want us to be a family of doers, and we're not all going to believe the same things. So that's just my personal take on the family of believers. I don't mean to be Debbie Downer. Belief is important, and it's a beautiful thing, and we all believe something. I just don't want it to be like the test for being a powerful Christian.
I'm checking it off my list, you never say that again. All right, let's talk about Bill Barker, our founding pastor, who had a very close friendship with Fred Rogers, as we already know. And by the way, for those of you, you may or may not know that Bill and Jean Barker were both voice characters on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, I want to know who remembers what their characters' names were.
They're the platypus.
Right?
They're the platypus. Yep.
Yes, but wasn't it Dr. Bill Platypus, I think? And I can't remember. Elsie Jean Platypus. So if you look at any of Fred Rogers shows of the past, anytime you see Dr. and Elsie Platypus, you'll know what voices they are. What do you think about how Bill's friendship with Fred Rogers influenced Ball Hill, other than what you already said?
I think already in the air in those days was the idea that all of the denominations were going to collapse and come together into one church. And I think that's, all the denominations had their offices in the same building on Riverside Drive in New York. And we thought that we were all just going to come together. And so the emphasis was community and togetherness. And that's something that, Fred Rogers was ordained a Presbyterian minister, and he was ordained to do his show. He was not ordained to lead a parish. He was ordained to preach the gospel in a secular way to children. In other words, preach the love that we see in Jesus. Preach the forgiveness that we see in Jesus. Preach the acceptance that we see in Jesus without mentioning Jesus. And I think that's pretty ingenious. I think it's a beautiful thing. And it's a gift that was given to the world through this community, through this presbytery, and with deep roots in this church. So I think the love of neighbor and the emphasis on community and neighbor have always been very much integral to the DNA of this congregation and of this friendship back in probably as early as the late 40s and into the 50s. Do you have an answer for that, David?
What you said. I couldn't have said it better.
Anyway, I think you answered about what Bill's vision was. I think you've done a fine job on that.
Yeah, if I can just say, I don't think in 1950 you had to have a specific vision for your church. You just had to have church. But I think the social events that were going on in the world were what created the identity. And they responded to their times in a beautiful and in a responsible way. And I think that's what gave us our identity as a congregation. Them responding to their times the way we need to respond to ours.
And that might I add, you mentioned what your dad used to say about Bill Barker, why he stayed even when he was at Selma.
Yeah, and as Brian mentioned in the sermon today, pardon?
I'm off course.
As Brian mentioned in his sermon today, one of the many things, but one talked about how the church had been 1,800 members at one point, and the next day, virtually, it was 1,000 members, and that was after he marched from Selma. And what I remember distinctly about that was the fact that my dad was, who was very close to Bill Barker, he was, I'm not sure, in favor of him marching, but he stuck by him because he believed in him and was able to change his way of thinking. And that's what really sticks out to me about Bill Barker. And Bill Barker wrote my dad, actually wrote the letter to my brothers and I sometime after, I think maybe after my dad had passed away, and told us how important that was to him. that he had supported him at that time.
All right, now on to our current strengths.
What are our current strengths? We were just talking about this as we were eating, and I think our current strengths are, I have never seen people in this church hating on each other. I have never seen any serious fighting in this church. Maybe there used to be, but in my time here, there never has been. I have never seen anybody rise up and try to overthrow the pastor. There was one that he left. I feel like, in 2014, when it became legal, we did a gay wedding, nobody batted an eye. Because love is love, just do weddings for people who are in love, just like you would for anybody else. And that was just accepted here. That's not the case. There aren't many churches like that. That accepts people, that welcome people, that don't fight. So you had Cal Wilson twice as your interim here, and you practically had to have a dictionary to listen to him preach. But he was great, he was wonderful, he was down to earth, he was humble. But I like it that I can preach somewhat more, academic sermons, and you're fine with it, so that's important to me. There are lots of good qualities. You get out in the world and do the stuff that Jesus tells us to get out there and do. And I think you care about this world, exactly as I said in my sermon. You care about this world and not just getting into heaven and sharing casserole recipes. Nobody makes casseroles anymore, but I feel like our Hill cares about the right stuff. Dave, do you know?
What I would add to that is Bower Hill, when I think about us as a family of believers, one of the other strengths that this congregation has is if you run into a problem, you have a bump in the road, big or small, in your life, you can count on this church. There's people here to support you in so many different ways. The other thing that comes to my mind is mission at this church. For years and years, as long as I can remember, mission has been critical to this church. We're getting lunch today. I said to Carrie that there's going to be a lot left over. What are we going to do with it? She said we're going to take it to the church in Carnegie who takes food. The people here are always looking to help other people. And that, to me, is what really stands out.
That was good.
Can I say something?
Yes,
I think one of our strengths is Brian.
Oh,
absolutely. Yes. Be careful with my thunder. Please remember that the 75th anniversary is a unique opportunity to not only celebrate our past and present, but to think about the future. We know that there are difficulties, not just Bower Hill, but in churches as a whole, trying to attract new members and keep current members engaged. Brian, what are your thoughts about that, and in particular, how this new upcoming speaker event series is one way that Bower Hill is looking to address these concerns?
So this is not a problem that's unique to Bower Hill. A lot of churches are struggling to know who they are going to be in the future because they're not attracting people as much as they used to. Voluntary organizations in general are not attracting people as much as they used to. Now there are churches that are still growing, but they tend to be churches who can threaten you with hell if you don't take part in the life of the church, and we're not going to do that. And so I think moving into the future, we need to be a vehicle by which people can live out their individual callings and live into mission. I think that's really what we need to be, the speaker series. So there are some big names in the sociology of religion in this country who you've probably never heard of, like Ryan Burge and Andrew Root. We thought that since nobody has ever brought that conversation, the future of religion in America, nobody has ever brought that conversation to Pittsburgh, that everyone is talking about it all over the country, we would actually bring them to Pittsburgh and hear professional people who study religion in America today talk about the future of religion, what it's going to look like, and how we can live into it. So the speaker series is going to include a panel discussion at the end, and it's going to have Greg Jones from the Baptist Church on it, because he's a PhD who talks about technology and religion. But we're going to have that at the very end. We're going to have Ryan Burge, who has a podcast about faith in America today. Most of his predictions are kind of gloomy. And then Andrew Root, who wrote a series of books about being church in a post-Christian era. And he's going to talk to us about ways forward for churches. What is church going to look like? I don't believe church is ever going to go out of business, but it's going to change pretty substantially in the future. And we think that this speaker series is going to not only invite other religious organizations, including synagogues, into the conversation here in Pittsburgh as part of our 75th celebration, but we're going to get these guys to ourselves for a few hours to talk to them about us and what they think about our way forward. And so that's kind of what we're thinking, but we are not inventing the wheel by ourselves. This is something that communities of faith and voluntary associations are all struggling with right now.
I have nothing to add.
I want to thank you both for doing this, and thank you for what you do for the church and for our church.
I think Dave's best weapon, so I think he's fixing it.
Thanks, okay.
Yeah.
So try it again. If there's some,
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. No, don't clap. I want to thank you both for all that you do and have done for Bonner Community Church. And we thank all of you out there who contribute so much to our church. It does not go unnoticed. And all of you are appreciated for what you do, and your name doesn't often come up